It's Jahf coming to live and alive from the city of Jahf.
We go fight, we go fight, fight to love,
Yeah, nobody wanna see us together, but it don't matter. Age don't matter. So it's Jahf. The name of the show is called Open-Minded, Not Blinded. And today, I want to welcome my very special guest, Kel, that's here in studio with me, as we are about to speak on the topic that you guys have been looking forward to, age gaps in relationships. So, Kel, please introduce yourself to the city of Jahf.
Hello, listeners to the city of Jahf. I'm happy to be here today, happy to speak on this show. Have lots of thoughts to share, so I'm excited to get started.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much for coming in today. We do appreciate you being here. So, the topic we're going to speak on is romantic age gaps in relationships. And studies have shown that romantic couples with a large age gap often raise eyebrows. Studies have found that partners with more than a 10-year gap in age experience social disapproval or social disapproval, but when it comes to our own relationships, both men and women prefer someone their own age, but are open to someone 10 to 15 years their junior or senior. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. I think that in general, it's safe to say that most people prefer to date or develop romantic bonds with somebody who is relatively close in age to themselves. However, I know there's individuals on both ends of the spectrum that prefer older partners or younger partners, just because of feelings that they have or maybe past experiences. So it does seem to be a very individual preference that people have. And it's something that you need to consider. I mean, as we all know, every dating app out there asks you what your parameters are for potential matches. And it's a question you need to ask yourself when you're setting up your profile. It's a question you have to ask yourself every time you meet someone new to determine if their age and your age are something that you're comfortable with.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. I can definitely see why you would share those sentiments. So we'll jump right into the questions here, Kel. What are your views on age gaps or large age gaps in relationships? Because they vary. We just talked about somebody prefers realistically 10 to 15 year age gaps for the person to be either junior, which is younger than them, 10 to 15 years, or senior, which is 10 to 15 years also, which is older. So what are your views on the age gaps or larger age gaps in relationships?
Well, I think in general, I mean, from my experience and my observations, culturally it's more acceptable for these larger age gaps if the man is older than the woman. So that's kind of traditionally been the way, but I think that, it's 2018 now, things are changing. People are becoming a little bit more open-minded to differences. I am 48 years old, and my personal guess as to who would be a great age for me would be somebody anywhere between the age of, let's say 40 and 50. So that's a little bit on the younger end, but I'm also open to people who are a little bit older than that. Not sure about people that are younger than that. I'm still trying to make some decisions on that. But in general, it seems to be more socially acceptable if the man is older than the woman. But I think things are changing now. I think that there's a lot of relationships, there's bigger gaps where the woman is older than the man. So it's just been my observation that that's definitely changing. Do you feel the same?
Well, one thing I want to point out first before I answer the question is that you seem to not be aging at all because you just said it's 2018 now. We happen to be in 2019. So, I mean, is this a strategic thing that you do? I mean, when you're dating, do you not age?
Dial it back a year, sure, no problem. Every year I'm getting a year younger. I love it.
So the thing is, do I feel the same? Yes, I have seen the change. To be honest, I know growing up and stuff, the social norm or the traditional thing was always the man being either older or at best or worse same age as the woman, right? And now we see that have definitely changed drastically. I tend to see a lot of older females with younger guys, and I'm not going to share my perspective on that just yet because I have a few more questions for you, Kel. So have you ever been in a relationship that had a large age gap?
Well, interestingly, I was married for many years. I was married for 15 years, and my husband at the time was 8 years older than me. We met when I was 24 and he was 32, which seemed a little bit of a big gap then. As we got older together, it seemed like less of an age gap. And it certainly worked for us. It worked for us on many levels, and it was just easy. There wasn't really any objection from friends or family or culture or anything like that. Because, again, he's older than I am. But now that I'm out in the dating world, I'm divorced, and I'm out in the dating world, and have considered dating potential partners that would be 10 or more years younger than me. And I'm having a bit of a hard time with that, to be honest. So personal experience, like I have dated somebody maybe like 4 or 5 years younger than me, but not more than that. And sometimes there've been conversations that I've started with people that are a large amount, like 10, 15 years younger than me. Sometimes those conversations don't feel as natural and easy as somebody who's closer to my age.
So you're saying you dated or you married to somebody that was 8 years your senior, and that it kind of worked out as you grew older together. But you're having a hard time, or it's challenging to picture yourself dating or being with somebody that's more than 5 to 6 years your junior.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that overall the age gap is like, the older you get, the less the age gap means, to be honest with you. Like, a 10-year age gap for a 15-year-old and a 25-year-old, that seems like a huge age gap. But you're talking about like a 50-year-old and a 60-year-old, that doesn't seem like a huge age gap. So it's like the older you get, it kind of mitigates in a way, and it becomes a little bit easier, I think. So it really depends on what stage of dating you're at, right? It just makes more of a difference when you're young, I think.
You're younger. So why do you think we pay so much attention to age gaps, though? As we said in the beginning, that society is basically frowning upon people with large age gaps in relationships. Why do you think that is, as a people, or maybe your own individual perspective? Why do you think we look at this and make it an issue?
Well, I mean, traditionally, it would be, if you're talking about two people coming together romantically and creating a family, age gaps can be a bit of a problem, because if, let's say there's like, and we know there's couples out there that have like 20-year age gaps and stuff. That's okay if the man is older than the woman, but women have sort of a harder cap on their reproductive years, right? So if you have, say a young man who's 25 and he wants to date a woman who's 40, well, she's already past the age of having kids, so that man at 25 is now looking at a situation where if he falls in love with this person and wants to become like life partners with them, children probably aren't in their future. So that plays into things as well. I'm not really sure what the other reasons are, but it's just socially, I think, because culturally we've carried this stuff for so many years, it's hard to adjust our mindsets. But again, thank you for correcting me, it's 2019.
Yeah.
Our mindsets collectively are changing about a lot of stuff, which is very, very positive, and I think that the thing with the age caps is being a little bit more socially accepted now too.
Yeah. And that's what this show is all about. It's called Open-Minded, Not Blinded. The aim is to really get us to challenge our mindsets and see why do we believe something that probably we carried with us for ages, and what probably our parents or grandparents believed in and why they believed in it. Like, why do we take it with us? Why do we continue to believe in it? So I think I can definitely appreciate your response to that question. My other question now is, do you think age really matters?
I honestly think that in many situations, age doesn't matter. You could have a person my age who is very active and wants to be really active and can keep up with somebody who is 10, 15 years younger. Or you could have somebody my age who's actually like very slow and not super active and maybe not wanting to be like looking forward to retirement and slowing down and those sorts of things. So because there's that wide spectrum, I think it comes down to individuals, like, and do your ages mesh? Someone who's young but feels old could make a great match for somebody who's older and wants to be with somebody older. Or perhaps both parties feel very young and they could be a good match in that sense. But I think the actual match and the meshing of the ages is more important than a standalone ages when you compare them together. Although the truth is that when people are thinking about becoming potentially like lifelong partners, you need to project those ages and the age difference into the future. I mean, a 15-year age difference in middle age might not be a big deal, but then you look at somebody who's 60 with somebody who's 75 years old, and there's a lot of difference between a 60 and a 75-year-old. And is it still going to be a successful match at that age is what you have to consider. And in that circumstance, it doesn't matter whether the man is older or the woman is older, or which partner is older. It's just, that's a big gap, 60 to 75. You know what I mean? Like in middle age, it doesn't really matter about the gaps, but when you're very, very young or when you're very old, I think that does matter.
Okay, so I think I understand your viewpoint on that. So you're saying if you're younger, it's okay to basically experiment with different ages, get that experience, and then if you're older though, it's more significant. You need to start paying more attention or become more conscious of the age.
Well, it might be okay at the time, like somebody, let's say 40 and 50, and that could feel okay, but you have to project that in the future too. There's going to be differences as those people age that might become more pronounced as they get older. Again, I think it's all really individual, and you have to take into consideration what stage of life people are at, because not everyone is at the same stage at the same age. Somebody could have young children, let's say under 5, in their early 20s, but you could also have somebody quite happy to have children under 5 when they're in their late 30s as well. So are they at the same stage of life? Or do you have somebody who's currently at the age where they want to have children and the other one who's at an age where they want to consider retiring? That's not such a good fit. Mm-hmm. Right? So all those things have to be taken into consideration, and it's really the matching between the two individuals. It shouldn't be hard and fast. I'm this age and I only date up or down by 3 years or whatever. That seems just silly to me.
And those are some really important factors you just touched on. I know that some people typically are wary of dating younger persons, especially, let's say, specifically women, because at a certain age, you pointed out earlier, no, I can't really reproduce, or I don't want to reproduce at this age. My time for having children, I've reached a cutoff, for example. So now I don't want to date a younger guy because maybe he doesn't have kids and he may want kids. So there's always that assumption there, right? So maybe what do you suggest in those aspects? Two people are just initiating conversation. Maybe they met and they have particular interest in each other, but now the age comes up. What is your age? That's a typical thing.
Well, here, I'll share a little story with you. I met somebody who is 4 years younger than I am, so he's 44 years old. Never been married, no children, which is fine. But he said that having children is actually really, really important to him. He does want to have his own biological children. And I said, well, unfortunately, I've closed up shop in that department. I'm not going to be having any more kids. And the question was, we really enjoyed each other's company. Like, are we going to move forward? Are we going to, take this a little bit further? And ultimately, my decision was no, not to. The reason being is that sort of a relationship seems to me to be doomed from the start. Either you're going to fall in love and have this tight relationship, and that the person who wants him wanting children would be, and not having them would be devastating for his life. He'll want them so bad and not have them. and I wouldn't want to feel responsible for that. Or you could develop a really tightly bonded relationship for a few years, and then at some point he's going to say, I'm sorry, I'm going to cast you aside. I need to go look for a younger woman to provide me with children. So either way, to me, there wasn't a good outcome to that.
Okay, so what about calling it down the middle in the sense that, okay, we looked at the really positive aspect of things and we looked at the negative aspect of things based on what you came up with. So how about maybe if the individual, male or female, whoever is younger, whatever the case may be, or what the expectations are, and then they grow so much to love you and want to share the rest of their life with you that they change what they initially wanted before they met you. So now they met you and they say, you know what, I love her so much, and I'm thinking, you know, as much as I want kids or wanted kids, I know this is the situation, these are the facts, biologically, genetically, whatever it is, and I know it's not going to happen, but I'm going to make the sacrifice of what I truly want. Because I truly believe love is a sacrifice, right? So the person may be willing to say, you know, I fell in love with her, I don't want anybody else, I want her. So I'm going to put what I want aside, selflessly, and just to make this work with her.
I do see the potential for that. And, you know, I even, in that scenario I described, I even considered that possibility. But ultimately then I would be like taking away like a whole aspect of life for that person. I would be the one responsible for them not having children. And I wouldn't want to disappoint anybody that way. I actually have another story about a couple that I know with a 20-year age gap where she is older than he is. So she is close to 60 and he is close to 40. And she has children and grandchildren. He has no children and wants children. So they broke up. They were together for 10 years, and then with this age difference, and then they broke up because she said, I'm letting you go so that you can find somebody to provide you with children. And he said, reluctantly, he said, okay. And then he went out and he started dating somebody else who was too old to have kids. So the first person he was dating said, well, that's just ridiculous. You should be with me then. And so anyway, they got back together. But it was her attempt to like let him go so he could find someone young and have children. And it was really, really hard on both of them.
So we just talked about sacrifice on the one person's part, happened to be the male gender. And then now there was a sacrifice, based on the example you made, the sacrifice on the woman's part for the guy to go there and actually get. So I think realistically, and the end goal in the second example you gave, it was they ended up getting back together. So I think what I can take away from this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can take away that love and sacrifice, they basically go hand in hand to making the relationship work. Not necessarily the age gap, but what is the fundamental of your relationship.
I agree. And, you know, it brings to mind like all the other compromises that couples who are truly tight make for one another. Perhaps one gets a fantastic job offer in another city. And so the other one has to maybe consider giving up their job and moving with them to this new city to allow them to have that opportunity. Couples make sacrifices for each other all the time. And it just sometimes, with the age gap, it brings another layer of compromise that needs to come in sometimes.
Most definitely. I believe that age, you know, some people say age is just a number. When I break it down, because on this show we like to break things down, I'm all about breaking it down. I believe that your age doesn't signify where you're at in life. I believe your maturity level, your reasoning, your capabilities to understand, and the way you react to things determines what you're ready for and what you're not ready for. Not necessarily your age, because you can be 34, for example, but you're still behaving like a 19-year-old, based on what society labels a 19-year-old to do. Now, or the expectations of a 19-year-old based on societies, right? I'm just thinking, based on everything I just said there, how and what do you think about that?
Yeah, societal. You can be at different stages at different points in your life. You could also have somebody who is young but who has their shit tight and hustles and works like somebody who's much older, and that's fantastic. You know, where people are at in their lives, it just has to work between the two people in question. So if the point that this person is at in life matches up and feels comfortable for that other person, no matter what stage they're at, then that couple is going to make it work. I think that, my feeling on this whole issue and our whole discussion today is that it really comes down to the individuals in question. However, the one item that we haven't really touched on is the other challenges that when couples do find an age gap between them but make it work for them, then they also have the challenges of dealing with their friends and family. Because sometimes family can object to that sort of thing too. And those can become big challenges, right?
Definitely. So you're saying, so it really comes, so we kind of sort of touched on it in the beginning when we talked about society frowns, so family is part of society. So their influence on, they have a certain influence on your decision. And I think that's important. I'm happy you brought that up, because I know that is a huge factor when it comes to people making decisions. What is my daughter going to think about this? Mm-hmm. What is my mom going to say? Mm-hmm. What are my co-workers going to think? Can I introduce him or can I introduce her? Can I bring her to Christmas parties? So sometimes the person becomes a secret, or you start suffocating yourself because based on what society may think of your relationship. So how does one deal with that? What are some ideas or suggestions you can give to kind of get past that if you're already in the dating process of a larger age gap? How would you suggest to address that?
Well, that's a really difficult one, and I actually don't have a solution for that. My feeling when I consider dating somebody that's of an age gap that people in my social circles, my family and that might find objectionable, my feeling is that I would want to just keep that to myself for a little while until I found out where it was going. And if I knew that it was going to be a real thing, and I wanted to have that person join into my family and social circles, you know what? I'd be prepared to defend any age gap or defend any objections people made to it. You just have to know in your heart, is this something that we can overcome these objections, right?
Nice. And what would you say in regards to, do you think it would be maybe appropriate as a suggestion to this, maybe have in the beginning of the initial stages of talking to the person, not even dating as yet, but talking, listen, guess what? The age gap that we have here, you know what, I don't know how my daughter or co-workers, for example, my kids may see this, my parents. However, I may not be willing to bring it out in the forefront just as yet. If we do happen to go somewhere with this, I just want you to know. So, and is it okay? Are you okay with that? If you're okay with that, then we can proceed. If not, I understand. Is it okay to have those type of conversations in the beginning?
I think for sure. And I think, a safe way to go, a safe way to go would be, let's say I have a new partner that is 10 years younger than I am. I want to bring them and introduce them to my family. I might, two things. I might introduce them to my family, and if anyone asks, I might say, oh, well, yes, my partner is 5 years younger than me. So there's a lie right there, which is not really what I would recommend, but I think my own thinking is that I would attempt to just avoid discussions of age. If somebody said, oh, so this person seems to be a little bit younger than you, I might say, yeah, they do seem to be a little bit younger than me, and shut the conversation down. Do you know what I mean? You could just say, you know what, that's none of your business. You know what works for us, and leave that stuff to us. Which I think is probably the most appropriate way to handle things in the beginning, is just keep that part of your relationship private. Nobody needs to know when they meet somebody how old they are or what the age difference is. You can leave that out and just ease into things. So
that brings me into a really, really important question now. So why do we put emphasis? You mentioned in the beginning that dating sites ask you the age limit that you prefer to date within. Why? Because you made a very important point. You said that you want to leave that part out to your family and friends. So how about we actually take the question of age, out of the statistics or the fundamentals to making a relationship grow or work from the beginning, instead of, if it's not important to family and friends, that's our business, as you said, right? Yeah. It's the both participants of the relationship, that's their business. How about not putting any emphasis on the age aspects of things? What if they took that part out of the dating curriculum altogether?
Well, I actually don't think that would be a great solution either, because to be honest, I am open-minded, yes, and I am open to age gaps more than a couple of years, yes, but I know myself, and I know I'm not open to a 20-year age gap. in either direction. So for me, it helps me to screen potential candidates, right? I don't want young men in their early 20s to date. That's just not, I would not be attracted to somebody that age. So it's pretty easy for me to know that I need to set the parameters, the age parameters a little higher.
And that's interesting. Remember, earlier I talked about the age necessarily not being the factor, but the factor is the maturity level, the capability to reason, and the way they react to things. I mean, like, society's expectation, I think you can agree, a typical 20-year-old may break the cell phone if something doesn't go his way or her way. You know, they may call you continuously even if you ask them not to, or does he say it's over. So how do we determine how the age and what they would do? How do we determine these things?
Well, again, it's nothing hard and fast, but I think that somebody in their early 20s doesn't have enough relationship experience under their belt to be operating at a level that I would expect in a relationship.
And that's a good question. What do you expect in a relationship?
Well, for me, I've been in long-term relationships, and I've been in much shorter dating relationships. I expect that somebody will be able to handle conflict with maturity.
That's a good one.
I expect that when somebody comes into my life, I want them to have had past girlfriends that they have fought with and learned what's the wrong way to fight and the wrong way to so that they've learned those lessons and can operate on the same level I am. Because I think that I've learned a lot of lessons through my relationships and my history.
That's deep.
Right? I think they just need experience in relationships. They need to have their heart broken a few times. You know, we all know you learn a lot of lessons from that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever cried over a girl before?
Yeah. So have you ever loved really intensely before? I want them to be able to recognize those things. I don't want to be with anybody those are all new experiences for them.
Wow, that's deep. I definitely can relate. And share basically almost the same sentiments, actually. So that's the one thing I can actually say. Yeah, I do appreciate everything you just said there. That example was superb, right? And which brings us really to the next question. Traditionally, women date younger men, and in turn, older men date younger women. Why do you think that is?
Traditionally women date men that are older than them. I think that stems from girls maturing earlier than boys in their teens and 20s. So what you find is that an 18-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl are probably not on the same emotional level, and they're not capable of the same types of relationships. I mean, in some cases, yes, but typically girls are maturing just a little bit faster than boys, so they're a few years ahead. So, you know, a girl at age 22 is probably mature enough to at the same level of maturity as a man at age 25 or 26. So that's a pretty common matchup, and I think it has to do with the early years and how girls just mature faster than boys.
And I've heard that before, actually, and I think in more ways than one it makes sense. But my question now, because you said that, what are some main reasons you think women may be reluctant to date a younger man? Just the main reasons. A few main reasons.
Well, I'll tell you one right off the bat, which is mature women don't want to have to be a mother and girlfriend to their partner. Right? So it makes me laugh a little bit, but some younger men have like mommy issues. And they're looking for someone who's going to not only be their girlfriend, but also, you know, buy their underwear for them at the store and make their lunch on the way to work. I mean, some of that stuff is relationship stuff, but it kind of gets weird feeling if the gap is too big and, you know, yeah, no woman wants to be a mother and girlfriend to their partner, right? So that's one of the things that definitely is a red flag. So why some women wouldn't want to date a younger man. Also, I think that there is a cultural phenomenon where sexually inexperienced young men seek out older women so that they can gain sexual experience.
I can see that.
Now, my take on that is also, when a woman is mature, she doesn't really want someone that she has to teach the ropes to.
No training.
No. You gotta come with the training wheels off already. So,
Well equipped.
yeah. You just don't want to have that teaching role in the relationship either. I mean, unless maybe there's women out there that's their thing, and if that works for them, then that's great.
I'm happy that you touched on the actual sexual aspect of the age gaps in relationships. No, this is important because you're right. I believe that the specific genders do reach their sexual climax at different stages and, permit me to say, ages.
Sure.
So if a woman is at her sexual peak and the younger guy is also, won't that make sense? Whether he's experienced or in training mode or he still has his training wheels on, whatever, however you want to word it, right? But won't it still be a good match? Besides everything else, the fundamentals, the other fundamentals. What about the sexual aspect of things?
Sure, as long as she doesn't have to teach him stuff, that works out fine. But you see, there also becomes an issue with when you're talking about the opposite age gap, which is women dating men that are a big age gap older than them. So then what happens is, we all know that most men experience at some point late in their lives, in their 50s, 60s, or beyond, they experience some sexual challenges. And women typically don't have those same challenges at that age.
Definitely.
So women in those cases may be seeking younger men who don't have those issues.
Definitely.
So there's age issues, there's health issues, there's
Performance issues.
yeah, that sort of thing. Well, there is. I mean, there is.
This is a PG show, by the way.
I'm keeping it PG, 100%. We're talking about health issues here. It can be challenging too.
Definitely. I can see, and we can spend days and hours on this, that aspect of things. So thank you for answering that question there. Next question I come to is, why would you encourage listeners to date larger age gaps or not, and why?
What I would encourage is being open-minded, because if you keep your age parameters tight and you stick to them, you might be missing out on somebody really wonderful.
Wow.
So be a little bit flexible, be a little bit open-minded, but also be self-aware and know what your own hard limits are. We all have an idea of what the perfect partner would be for us, but it's difficult to find the perfect partner. You sometimes have to compromise on different things, and if you have to compromise on age, it's not one of those ones that's insurmountable.
Wow, that's deep. I definitely respect that, and I agree with that, to be honest. And it's not very often you hear me agreeing with a lot. So my next question would be, what is your personal biggest concern about dating larger age gaps?
Well, I would say the two main concerns for me would be family and friends and their opinions on it, and having to defend that. That can become a headache. It can become tiresome for couples that have to defend themselves from friends and family. The other caution would be how comfortable you are with things. Maybe you find somebody that is slightly outside of what you're used to dating age-wise, and that can be okay, but sometimes things just feel weird when you get too big of an age gap going. And you need to be able to recognize what your own boundaries are and know when it makes you uncomfortable. It's hard to say to somebody, you know what, you're just too old.
Or you're too young.
Or you're too young, yeah. It's hard because people are going to argue with you if you don't feel the same way. But you have to know yourself well enough to make those decisions. Sometimes it can be difficult.
And this question wasn't on my list there, but I think it's a very important question because some people are probably thinking about this as we're talking on the topic. What is a good way to tell somebody, younger or older, that, hey, guess what? This isn't working out because of the age gap. Because you perceive it to be the age gap as the main reason. So how do you word that? How do you say that to somebody? Take some time if you need to.
Well, it's a really difficult thing to say to anybody. If they find the age gap to be acceptable and you don't, it's a difference of opinion, and they're not going to be happy with your answer either way. It hurts. I'm sure it hurts somebody to hear you're too old, and I'm sure it would also hurt somebody to hear you're too young. So you just need to be sensitive, and you need to be real about what the factors are. Age gap itself is not a reason, but you might say we're at different maturity levels, or I need somebody who's more closely matched to my stage of life, maybe approaching retirement, or I need somebody who's more closely matched to my youth and vigor and how I'm out there all the time and doing millions of things. So you have to be sensitive and explain what the impact the age gap has on your potential match. You can't just say, it's an age gap, it's too big. Just give the reasons why it's too big. Like, what are the restrictions that are going to be preventing you from entering into that relationship?
Wow. So it has to basically be well thought out before you just say it to somebody.
Oh, of course. But I mean, yeah, you just need to be honest and truthful. I think that's the best way to explain anything to anyone.
But it's the way you present it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's definitely, I'm sure a lot of people can respect and appreciate that. This question may sound a little bit repetitive, but do you think people should date within their age limits?
The majority of really great matches, I think, are generally within a few years of one another in age. Do I think somebody should stick to that and hold on to that and not be flexible? No, not at all, because you really could be missing out on somebody great. So the short answer is no, they shouldn't stick to it.
Oh, that's perfect to hear. So, because you remember the show is called Open-Minded, Not Blinded. Mm-hmm. What do you think is a respectable age gap?
Oh, that's the most impossible question to answer. Well, the word respectable is...
one that society is not probably going to frown on. It's not too big, it's not too small.
Well, okay, that's easier. There actually, I think, is like a formula for... I've heard this is been rumored for years. There's this formula for what's an acceptable age gap. If a man takes his age, divides it in half, plus 7 years. So let's say a 40-year-old man could date a woman, so half his age would be 20, plus 7 is 27. A 40-year-old man could date a 27-year-old woman, and that would be acceptable. An 80-year-old man could potentially, if he was still dating, date a 47-year-old woman. So that's like a bigger gap. So the formula is supposed to be what's socially acceptable. It doesn't work when you turn it around the other way, because those same age gaps wouldn't be so acceptable
by women,
by society standards, if the woman were the older one. So maybe they need to develop a new formula.
So give me a short example of what is maybe an acceptable age gap, like the longest or shortest.
Well, I really feel with women that women can date men that are older, and society seldom objects to that, unless the gaps are 15 or more years older. For a woman to date someone younger, generally I find that if it's within 3-4 years of their age, that society's not going to look at that. I think when it gets past 3 or 4 years, people start going, wow, that's a big difference. And the bigger the gap, the more people are going to object.
Most definitely, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners are going to agree with you on that. This show is called Open-Minded, Not Blinded, so we challenge our mindset. Do you think that age gaps can be a limitation to genuine relationships?
No. Well, I mean, in some circumstances, if you just don't match, I think there's a lot of things that are, I mean, the age gap might affect in some ways, but I really think that even with large age gaps, things can work for couples. I mean, the couple that I mentioned earlier that split up and got back together again, they have a 20-year age gap. She's older than he is by 20 years. And they're crazy in love. And they've been together for like 12 years now. So it can certainly work.
And is this your friend, like your personal friend you're talking about?
Somebody that I know personally.
And I'm sure you guys probably had conversation. You don't really need to get into it if you don't want to, but what are some of the challenges, if any, that she would talk about are the most significant ones?
Well, for sure, she does not share this relationship with her family because they would object to it for sure. Yeah, that would be a huge problem for them. So they keep that away from their family. His family knows about it, and I'm not sure how they deal with the age gap, but she won't bring her family into it.
And for all the family members listening right now, or people that have issues with people dating larger age gaps, whether it's younger or older, junior or senior, what advice would you give to them? To say, well, hey, guess what? Be open-minded about it. What advice could you give them? What advice? Could you give
Well, first of all, don't just look at the numbers. There's so much more to consider than the numbers. If this is a friend or a family member that's in a relationship and you're concerned about the age gap, look at the way the age gap is going to affect the couple. Are they at different stages of their life? You know, maybe one has babies and one has kids in university. Well, that could still work. So is that really something that family and friends should object to? I don't think so. You need to just see if the couple's working well together. And if they are, then, you know what? Don't object and don't give them a hard time. You know, it's really none of your business. If it works for the couple, let them be.
So your advice would basically be to be supportive.
Well, yeah. I mean, just be joyful that the person that you know has found somebody that brings them so much joy. Right? You need to be appreciative of that because that kind of a match isn't easy to find. And sometimes there's issues that need to be overcome. And if the couple is working together well and they're overcoming those issues, then you just need to be thankful that they found a really wonderful person for them.
Wow. That's powerful right there. Thank you for that. So we've come to the part of the show where you give your tips and strategies. So what are some tips you'd give to people who are currently in or thinking about getting into a large-scale age gap relationship?
Well, just see how it feels. I mean, if, you know, when comparing your lives, does it work? Does, you know, do energy levels match? Are you interested in the same things? It's the same as any other couple that's evaluating one another, and do you want to get into this sort of relationship? If it feels good and it's working for you, then just go with it. Don't allow the objections of family and friends to dissuade you from something that might be really joyous. You just need to feel it out, see how it feels, and make those decisions, not based just on the numbers, based on how well it works for the two of you.
Wow, that's deep. And for strategies, what are some strategies people should use when approaching a large age gap relationship?
Well, I guess my answer to this is kind of the same thing I just said, which is evaluate like individual aspects of your relationship without looking at the numbers. Do your energy levels match? You could be the exact same age as a potential partner, and if your energy levels don't match, then it's not going to be a good fit. So if there's a big age gap, it's still the same evaluation. If one person wants to like go out jogging and hiking and playing basketball 5 days a week with you, are you up for that? Or do you want to more like stay at home and
Knit.
and knit? I was actually going to say that. I was trying to think of something that was like less stereotypical old lady. Maybe you want to stay home and do some gardening when your partner wants to go out climbing Mount Everest, right? You need to make sure that those things are a good fit.
Mm-hmm. So basically what? Compromise? You try to work with the person?
Of course, yeah. I mean, and again, you just have to, don't look at it as just an age thing. It's more of an element that's individual to each person involved.
Wow.
And try to take the age out of it because it really is the number. And people have different aspects of themselves at different ages. Again, you could have the same person at 40 and a different person at 40 have different levels. So take it all into account without looking at the numbers.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. I so wish we can keep going, and probably will have you back in some other time. But it has come to the time of the show where I give my tips and strategies. So my tips, open-mindedly for large age gaps in relationships. I want to say you can you can't limit anything genuine and real in a relationship. So not a relationship, but a real relationship. True love has no limitations, whether it's race, education, distance, finances, social class, and specifically age. So basically, don't limit yourself. You want something genuine, you want something real, sometimes you have to make sacrifices. You may get everything you wanted in a partner financially. They may pass the bar on that. They may pass the bar on great communication. They may be tall, dark, and handsome, if that's your expectations or you want it, your preference. And then the age gap is larger. So what are you going to do? Turn it down?
You know, you just don't want to narrow yourself down and miss out on something that might be really great.
Definitely, most definitely. And my strategies, oversee yourself. Don't live based on society's expectations of you. Do what makes you happy within yourself. As long as you have answered all the questions you have asked yourself and you're okay with those answers, go for it. Those are my tips and strategies. Cal, it's the time of the show where we call it your time. You can tell us every and anything you would like the City of Jahf Reach listeners to know about yourself, and if they can connect with you outside of this forum, how they can do so. So it's your time to shine.
Well, I've actually shared most of my thoughts on the age gap issue. As far as me personally, I just want people to know that, you know what, it's like being open-minded is so important, and I think that the way I live my life is being open-minded, and I have to be open-minded to everything, whether it's a different age gap, different race, different financial status, all those things, that's important to me. Connections with other people are important. So if you meet somebody who's outside your age gap, maybe they're not going to be a dating partner, but you can never have too many friends. And just make connections to other people. That's what I encourage everybody to do in their life. Know yourself and make connections.
Thank you, Kelly. Very well put. On behalf of the Jahf Reach show and all the listeners from the Jahf Reach city, the City of Jahf Reach, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate you so much. We look forward to any feedback. If you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, even opinions to share with us or Cal specifically, you can email us at Jahf Reach or the Jahf Reach Show or jahfreach@gmail.com. Please remember to find us at Jahf Reach, that you can Google, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, Facebook, WhatsApp, and all that. Comment, share, like, and subscribe. Please remember, don't keep the message to yourself. Share it with someone else. Until the next one, it's Jahf Reach, not Jahf Come. Salute. Kaba.